Hey everyone, welcome to Nautilus TV. I'm Deborah McPherson, web editor at Nautilus International. With me is the union's head of international relations, Danny McGowan. He's going to give us an update on our work with the ITF cruise ship task force. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks, Deborah. Nice to be with you.
So, Danny, what is the cruise ship task force?
The Cruise Ship Task Force is a body set up by the International Transport Workers Federation, or the ITF. That's the global union federation for all transport unions. But obviously, in Nautilus, we're focused on the seafaring and maritime unions. And the task force is a group of those unions who do a lot of work in and around the cruise ship sector.
And what's your role in the task force?
The task force is made up of a few different groups of people. One of the groups is representatives of unions from beneficial ownership countries. So that's where I come in from a United Kingdom perspective. And with me in that group are representatives from unions in Germany and the USA. And the rest of the task force is made up of the chair of the task force, of ITF inspectors who are specifically trained on cruise ship inspections to take place around the world, and then also labour providing unions from countries such as the Philippines, Indonesia, and India.
I understand the task force met recently. What interesting snippets can you tell us about that meeting that might matter to Nautilus members?
Thanks. Well, a particular relevance right now is the situation in the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. And there are still many thousands of cruise ship seafarers stuck in that area as a result of the hostilities. Now, clearly, the resolution to that situation is wider than a cruise ship only resolution. However, there are at the time of recording, at least, still 7 cruise ships stuck in that area.
How are we helping seafarers on board those cruise ships?
As I say, the response to that situation is wider than cruise ships alone. Many of the companies who have vessels stuck in the area are working hard to repatriate their crew. They have already repatriated the passengers through various different means, but as a result of the lack of commercial flights or the reduced availability of commercial flights, repatriation has been difficult. But they are working on that. Seafarers on cruise ships, for example, have been able to access the public areas in greater ways than they would have been able to outside of this situation. And they've also been working hard to get medications and other supplies to seafarers that they wouldn't ordinarily have to do so because the seafarer would be able to access them themselves at various points of the voyage and at various points of their contract. Now, aside from that, which is very relevant and very current to world news now, the updates that we received at the meeting were in relation to the still strong number of bookings that the cruise ship industry is seeing, the strong number of new building vessels that the sector is planning for over the next few years, and that despite there are some cruise companies that don't have agreements with unions or with the ITF, there is a really large coverage of the approximately 330,000 seafarers around the world. So approximately 80% of those are covered by collective bargaining agreements with unions, with the ITF, that cover their terms and conditions, which is a real positive. But still, there's 20% more that we would like to see whose employment is covered by those regulations.
Is it true that a lot of cruise ships are flag of convenience vessels, and so therefore it's been vital for unions to cooperate internationally?
That's right. So the ITF's focus is on flag of convenience vessels, and it has a long-standing flag of convenience campaign, of which Nautilus supports. It's really important that in the context of that campaign and in the context of flags of convenience, that unions from beneficial ownership countries and unions from labour providing countries are able to have a way of working together closely to look at those terms and conditions for all seafarers. Now, many unions will be specific to officers alone or to ratings alone, but there are also unions who cover all of those ranks on board, and they'll also look at everything from officer rank right through to hotel catering and concessionaires as well. And so it really does look across all forms of employment in the cruise industry.
Right. And that beneficial ownership is where we look to see where we can carry out union negotiations. Is that right?
That's right. So the beneficial ownership unions, so in the UK, Nautilus International, for example, we have the right to negotiate with the companies whose vessels are beneficially owned in the UK. And so that's where we work together with our strategic organisers and our organising department to assist our members working for those cruise companies. But it's really important because there are so many seafarers from other countries on board that we have those close links with those unions from the labour providing countries as well. And both the ITF and the Cruise Ship Task Force give us that opportunity to pursue those relationships. Some really important work for the future that's going to take place from the Cruise Ship Task Force. In the future, we're looking at developing our relationship with CLIA, which is the Cruise Line Industry Association. Of course, there will be areas of disagreement between unions and CLIA's members, but there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to work together and find areas of common interest to be able to improve the situation for seafarers working in the industry. There's also the opportunity for us to work with seafarers and with companies who provide seafarers to the concessions working on board the vessels. In many cases, those seafarers don't always get covered by wider collective bargaining agreements for hotel and catering crew, for example. And so that's a specific area of work that we want to pursue over the next 12 months and beyond. And another area of work is in relation to gratuities. A wider number of companies are including gratuities within the fare that they charge to passengers, but it's not always clear that those gratuities are then being passed on to the seafarers working on board the vessels. And so that's something, again, we want to explore further from an international perspective and gain understanding from different companies and from different unions as to how we can improve that practice globally for all seafarers. It's not a new conversation, but certainly the fact that we have greater access to information sharing and hopefully through wider relationship building with industry bodies, we'll be able to explore that in greater depth.
Why are we developing this relationship with CLIA?
It's certain that CLIA have a wide area of respect within the industry. And whilst they don't cover all cruise companies, they do cover a large majority of them. And it's important for us that as well as having the relationships with individual companies and individual operators, that we're also able to work with a body like CLIA to be able to have a wide-ranging conversation for the industry as a whole. Individual collective bargaining agreements will always take place with the individual companies and the individual operators. Sometimes that will happen via brands in larger corporations. Other times it will happen with a single cruise company with a smaller fleet. But the conversation with CLIA is something for us to be able to widen that across the industry as a whole and be able to ensure that there, or try to make sure that there are companies that are not necessarily competing against each other in relation to crew terms and conditions. We've got a large proportion of our members who work in this industry that we want to be able to stand up for and to represent in this international body alongside other trade unions from around the world. The task force meets once a year. We do that a mixture of both in-person and online meetings. What we would be doing over the next 12 months before the next meeting is putting together working groups of specific unions who will be able to progress matters such as the the relationship with CLIA, for example, and also progress matters on the information sharing surrounding gratuities and other areas. So we'll be taking part in as much of that as possible, putting forward Nautilus members' points of view and standing up for our members in those areas to make sure that we can get the best outcome for our members and for all seafarers in the industry when it comes to terms and conditions and the working environment for seafarers.
Oh, thanks, Danny. And if any of our cruise ship members want to ask any questions about this or put any suggestions forward, can they do that?
Best way is to get in touch with your strategic organizer who will represent you in your company. That way they can get a strong idea of issues that may be collective issues within a member's own company. And then I will also liaise with the strategic organizer and others to be able to make sure we put those areas forward that are of international, that need an international response. We'll put those forward in the ITF cruise ship task force meetings and other work that we're doing.
Thank you, Danny. It's great to understand more about some of the cruise ship matters that are important to our members and what role we play in it.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm really pleased to be able to share that part of our work with you and with our members.